Hello, good to have you back. Now, away from state of execution, notice of appeal, today let's talk about your rights as a tenant. As a tenant, what are those rights that you have? The law recognizes that you have certain rights that must be protected against your landlord. So, we're going to talk about some of the rights that you have in this video. Number one, you have the right to peaceful and quiet possession. What does this mean? It means that the moment you become a tenant, the landlord cannot barge into your premises, cannot barge into your apartment at will. You have the right to enjoy the rent that you have paid for. You have the right to enjoy the rent from the beginning you pay the rent up to the time you were lawfully evicted from the premises. Either the landlord or his agent or anybody at all claiming through him or her do not have the right to oppress you, do not have the right to barge in on you. When you do that, it will be trespass, and which means you will have an action against them in tort. Of course, this does not mean that the landlord cannot come to the house. He can come to the house for the sake of inspection or for any other purpose or any lawful purposes agreed upon by the parties. But upon his coming to your house or to the premises for inspection or for any other reason that the law recognizes, he has to give you sufficient notice that he is coming to the premises. And of course, this means you cannot prevent him from inspecting the premises, because of course the law recognizes the fact that from time to time he can come and inspect the premises, or if he is selling off the property. I mean, we've seen this happening in a lot of cases where there's a change of ownership of the property, and then the new property, before he purchases, the new owner, before he purchases the property, comes to inspect the property itself. So the landlord has a right to inspect the property, but he does not have the right to barge in on you. So you have the right to peaceful and quiet possession. You have the right to enjoy that rent that you have paid for. Secondly, you have the right that is protected against unlawful eviction. The moment you become a tenant, the landlord cannot evict you nor anybody from the premises. Your right is protected. It means that whether or not the rent is due or whether or not your rent has expired, the due process of the law has to be followed. You cannot say, okay, your rent has expired, you have refused to pay your rent, I've served the notices, I've served all the statutory notices, and you have refused to leave. And so he comes with police, or he comes with people, or he comes with agents, or he comes with thugs, and then chase you out of the house, or begin to bring your things out of the house, or he begins to remove your roof, or padlocks your gates. That is trespass, and you have a right against him. He does not have that right under any circumstances to unlawfully evict you from the premises. Now, the moment you become a tenant, all that he needs to do is for him to go to the court and lawfully evict you. Of course, we're going to talk about this in a subsequent video. So you have the right to be protected against unlawful eviction. Unlawful eviction means that there can be lawful eviction, and the lawful eviction is the eviction by the court after due process of the law. So in case you've been a victim or you're currently being harassed, I will come and lock your gates, I remove the roof of your house. You can take action against him in trespass. That is trespass. You can take action against, you have a right against him, no matter who he is. He cannot do that. He cannot remove your roof. He cannot padlock your house. He cannot bring people to your house and chase you out of the house without going to the court. It is the court, the due process of the law, that can lawfully evict you from the house. Thirdly, one of the rights that you have as a tenant in the house is the right against arbitrary increment of rent. He cannot wake up suddenly and tell you that he's increasing the rent without sufficient notice. Mark the phrase sufficient notice, which means that he has the right to increase the rent. However, he cannot do that without adequate notice. So which means that he has to give you sufficient notice. He has to give you notice. Your rent you'll be doing let's say the next 1 month, and then he comes around and say, okay, your rent, you're paying 1.3 million, now you're going to be paying 1.8 million or 1.5 million. Or all of a sudden, like we've seen recently, he wakes up, you've been paying 400,000 naira, and you say, okay, right now you're going to pay right now you're going to pay 1 million naira. That is an arbitrary increment of rent. And so you have a right to say, oh no, that this rent, this increment is too sudden. Of course, this is the law. He is the landlord. Nonetheless, he has the rights over his properties, but he cannot just suddenly wake up and then begin to increase the rent at his will. He can't do that. Now, what happened in a situation where he say, okay, you pay the rent or you leave my house? I'm increasing the rent. It's my property, so I can do whatever I want to do with it. You can have an action against him. However, it is best you negotiate with him. Okay, the time you're giving to me to pay this rent is short. Please, I need a little time. I need X, Y, Z. And please, given the fact that the increment is way higher than my previous budget, I beg you, please let me pay X, Y, Z amount. All you need to do at all times is to come to a compromise, come to an agreement with your landlord without the necessity of having any trouble with him or going to court or waiting for him to take it to court. There are several rights that you have, but amongst them, the most important of the rights that you have is the one that you should enter a tenancy agreement with him, a written tenancy agreement with him. Now, what does a tenancy agreement do for you? A written tenancy agreement spells out the terms. All of these things we've talked about, it will be spelled out in the agreement. It will be spelled out, the notice he should give to you. It is be spelled out when he can come and inspect the premises. It will be spelled out when he can increase the rent. All of these things, once they are contained in the tenancy agreement, then it means he cannot go outside the agreement, because the law is that the court cannot rewrite agreement of parties, and the law is that agreement of parties is strictly construed by the court. So it is important that amongst all of these things, that you insist on having a tenancy agreement with your landlord, whoever the person is, whether it's male or female, or whether it's a company or not. Insist on having, and then please, when you have a tenancy agreement, or when you are entering the tenancy agreement with your landlord, it is important that you have a lawyer go through to vet all of these things, so that certain clauses will be there. The clauses are not against you, the terms are not against you.